did everybody accepted the term house music? I mean, where would you say the word term house music came from?
Um, it look, when the older cats would go to see Frankie Knuckles at 206 Jefferson, right? They would always say they going down to the house, right? Because he was playing this kind of R&B disco music. It wasn't necessarily electronic, but it was like this R&B. So the warehouse was the warehouse. They was going to the house. When the scene, when the scene, as the scene was developing, and the warehouse was closed, and he opened up the power plant, take out the where, use the house to associate the culture with this type of, to associate yourself with this type of culture, right? It per se disco, it's the warehouse music or stuff that could have been played at the warehouse, right? So when you see flyers, old flyers that say house music, but there was more disco played in these parties. Now, as the world know house music, it to me, after Jesse Saunders released On and On, it wasn't the on and on that everybody was clinging to. It was the other side. It was the tracks that, as I said before in my previous speaking, mentioning earlier about me selling my records to track, it was the beats that you can have segues into some of these songs, right?
Sure.
And after a while, there wasn't that much segue into house records to disco records because the house record, the track itself had a harder kick, right? So it made the disco record stand out. This is something Farley said on his own, right? Which is true. The record, the track made the disco record sound, made the kick sound that much more because you had speakers, you had bass. You know how brothers is. We gotta have some bass. You can't be coming with no tweeters and trying to say we gonna. So once that faded out, now house music is becoming a thing because every track, every song that came out had some type of moving, or we call it beating, some type of uh rhythmic track that would make a dance floor go crazy. It may have a funky turnover. It may have a certain hi-hat pattern, or it just fit within the structure of that song. But it was always the beat that drove because the kick drum was driving the song. And every house record, especially in the early days, the kick drum was driving the song. So this is house music. This is the house music that we know today. And sometimes people get it confused with disco. The culture of house music started. The culture of the culture of it, stems from the warehouse or the older cats taking out the where and calling all their parties house parties because the same type of music, it was an extension of that era or of that time or of that music of that scene. So when, again, like I said to you, I got introduced to house music or the culture of house music in '83. It had been going on before then. But record, the terminology of house, when you talk about the music, not the disco, but the music, your on and ons, your 5A's, your jacking with the funking with the drums, Steve Hurley's Jack Your Body, Tyree's I Feel the Night, Mike Dunn's Dance Mother, Adonis, on and on and on and on, all that stuff. That's house music. That's the music. That's what it is. But some people
core.
That is the core because some people mix it up with the disco part of it and say, "Oh, that's
Yeah,
house
I
music."
noticed that. Yeah, I noticed that. Some people
No,
try and
that's not.
say, yeah, when you're talking about the history, they say, yeah, but it came from disco. But you're like, dude,
Yeah. It started.
there's
It
no.
started in '73. Like, no, that's we talking about the culture. Understand what culture is. Something has to be cultivated to become something. So this was the predecessor too, because right after that, Jesse did Wayne Williams, Undercover, and Fantasy, and Farley did Funkin' with the Drums, and Mr. Lee did Shoot Your Best Shot. I mean, all these records was coming out. So, like I say, the disco part, only a certain core group of people stuck with that part of the culture, so to speak, and that's what they play and still sometimes to this day still play it. But it's all right.